So, Brendan, thank you for joining me this morning. I really wanted to get your views on forward-facing questions because some of my clients and the new recruits are struggling with the how, and we know for forward-facing, it's how, it's the why, how, and what. A lot of them are more comfortable with the shopping list angle of how. So, for example, a question like how, more simple one, how will you maintain good physical mental health when you're a police officer? They start off with the hows they will, and they're struggling with the why. So can you help me?
Of course I can. Yeah. I've got my handy whiteboard here. So let's do some scribbling just to remind people so they've got a visual of what our model is for a forward-facing question. We have the why to start with. Why is the thing so important? Why is physical health so important as a police officer? Why are standards so important? Why is collaborating with partner agencies important? Why are ethical standards and standards around the code of ethics so important? So whatever the question is, the first stage is actually describing the why. And I'll go into that in a bit more detail for you in a moment. Next stage is the how, and this is so how are we going to deliver on this? How are you as a police officer in the future going to deliver on this thing, whatever the thing is? And I think here, the important thing to focus on is no more than three things. Because
So
as you,
I
before you
want
get
to
the shopping
yeah,
list, yeah,
yeah.
go on.
So what's the downside to starting with the hows instead of the whys?
Well, I'll just finish off with what
Okay.
the last one is. And it's the what. It's like the so what.
Yeah.
What's this going to result in? When I do this, what will it result in? So yeah, what's the downside of starting with the hows and not the why? I think what we want to do is we want to try and capture the attention of the panel because if you think about it, final interview, and this is the same for promotion as well. The interviewers, and you know this because you've been one of those interviewers, you might be like, you've set aside 3 days of your week or even a whole week, depending on your role and can you be spared or not. But you might be interviewing for a whole week, which might be like 6 or 7 candidates every day for a whole week.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, you remember yourself, don't you? Sometimes you'd be thinking, I can't remember anything that anyone said yesterday. It's just a blur. Do you remember? It's just like a blur, isn't it? Like all of these people are sat in front of you, they're all a bit nervous and fidgety, and you're trying to help them do the best they can. But at the end of the day, how many of them did you actually remember? How many of them did you think, I really enjoyed listening to Catherine? Listening to James was just incredible. I hope I get to meet him. I hope he's on our division. Actually, I hope he's on our team. I'd love him to be on my team. So, but it's rare. That's rare, isn't it? So, and I
Yeah.
think it's because people just go straight into, oh, how I'd maintain my physical health. I'd make sure I walk the dog. I would always go to the gym. I'd spend time for myself, blah, blah, blah. And it's just a big shopping list.
Mm.
And you sound the same as everyone else.
See
Just
what you
like
mean.
you just sound the same as everyone else. So, we've got to deliver our how, but the why is where we can put this hook in. Um, and so we're going to hook their attention by coming up with something that's going to help them remember you and going to have them on the edge of their seats thinking, oh, this is different. Hmm. Wow. I wonder what's coming next. And they will think that because suddenly you've broken the mold of what they normally get, which is just this long shopping list. And I can guarantee you one thing. If your shopping list is like 7 or 8 things that are vague, I promise you that by the time you get to number 7 or 8, they've forgotten what one and two are. And even if they've written it down, they're just not interested because they've heard it all before from everyone else. Like if it's something about trust and confidence in communities, people just saying, yeah, so I would make sure that I speak to people, I'd hold community meetings, I'd go and visit schools, I'd always ensure that I'm listening to, it's just, you see, it's just like, sounds like everyone else. Sounds
Yeah.
like everyone else. So we want to get out of that mold of sounding like everyone else and hit them with something that's, I don't mean hit them, but like metaphorically hit them with something that's going to grab their attention.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I see what you mean now. Yeah, no, I see. As one I think they struggle with is community. How, and this has been a popular question in the last few weeks, is how will you connect with the community you police? And I think they've become a bit nervous about, oh, what is community? I feel them struggling not. So they automatically go to something they can answer.
I
So that,
think yeah, this one plays straight into my strengths, as you're probably well aware, because I was a neighbourhood inspector for 8 years and pioneered some community engagement and problem solving techniques that led to me eventually working with the European Union on a big project to help improve policing in Central and Eastern Europe. So this is my thing. So I know one of the common questions is something like, how would you build up trust in communities that have little faith in the police? Or how would you go about I'll write these down so I don't forget them. So trust, and another one I've heard is how would you go about reaching out to communities that are hard to reach or seldom
yeah,
heard?
I
Uh,
agree.
so hard to reach, seldom heard, and I hate that phrase. And I'll tell you why I hate that phrase, and then I'll go into it in more detail in a moment. Actually, let's go into more. I'll go into more detail now before I forget and go off at tangents, because you know what I'm like, Catherine. I go off at tangents.
Oh,
Hard to reach, seldom heard. That I just can't forgive any police officer who says that. Oh, that community is hard to reach. Oh, they're seldom heard. Whenever I hear that, I just think the reason why they're hard to reach is because you've not got off your backside to go and see them,
mm,
expecting them to come to you, but they won't. I mean, you've been to community meetings before, haven't you? The you said we did meetings that we had to run, and there'd be like three people turning up. And
yeah, yeah,
one of them wants to talk about um, the ratio of a bike frame to the wheel. I've had that one. Inspector, can you tell me what the correct ratio is from the bike frame to the wheel? And I was like, I don't know. Why do I care? Just, and then another one wants to talk about dog poop in the park, which of course is important. And then there's another one who wants to talk about speeding cars. And then
yeah,
someone else who just turns up anyway because they just like got nothing else to do. And so they're the people who are just like they just love the police anyway. They're almost like police groupies, and bless their
yeah,
soul, I love them to bits, but they would never raise anything like, Inspector, I'd like to ask you, and I'd like you to be accountable for what you're doing around organised crime, because I'm aware that someone had their finger snipped off the other day because they couldn't pay a loan. It's something that no one ever said at any of those meetings. So I've got this thing that look, you need to go to the bumping spaces where people are. So I suppose I'm going into one of their hows now, but I'll focus on the why first. So why is it so important that we reach out to members of the community who may not trust us?
yeah. Good one.
And I think the why is because of things like vulnerability. We've got people there, young people, old people, people from all backgrounds who are extremely vulnerable, who may end up one day harmed sexually or physically or dead. And
Yeah,
everyone would be asking, how did this happen? Why was this? Why were we not aware of this? And it's because we've not got that contact. We've not built up that trust in that community. And they don't talk to us because why? Because they're hard to reach and seldom heard, because we've not got out of our backsides and gone to the places where they are. Because you can name any community anywhere in the United Kingdom, I'll find a way of talking to them within hours.
mm,
In hours. If I'm in that area, I will find a way of talking to those people, whoever they are, whatever their background. I'll find a way of talking to them within hours. And so um, that's why I think it's an unforgivable phrase. I wouldn't say that on my interview, though. I wouldn't say that's an unforgivable phrase. I'd just say it's a really interesting concept, that hard to reach and seldom heard. I sometimes wonder whether it's because we've actually made the effort,
yeah,
whether we've made the effort. So why
yeah,
is it important? There's a vulnerability.
yeah,
Uh, Also, there's that sense of, we don't know what's going on in terms of criminality. The stats may say in this area,
yeah,
oh, there's not much crime going on, but actually, it's not much crime going on that's being reported.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
In the meantime, young women who have taken out a loan from a loan shark are being raped on a Friday night because they can't pay the loan. And it's not that they're being raped instead of the payment just rolls over with more interest. And you and I both know this is the ugly world in some communities that are seldom heard, hard to reach.
So would you say that in an answer that, just because there's low crime, it might just be that it's not reported?
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
think if any new recruit came up with something like that, it would show, well, if you think about yourself as an interviewer, you'd be
Yeah.
thinking, wow, that's
Down. Yeah, that's going to go on my board now. Thank you.
I, you're like that's next level. That's next level. I wouldn't expect some of my sergeants to be coming up with stuff like that. Um, so I think it'd show an incredible insight, and they may even ask, where did you get that information from? In which case, they could always say, well, as part of my research to join the police, I've been speaking to a retired chief inspector or a retired inspector or a retired superintendent, and they've been talking to me about the reality of policing and community engagement. I think,
Yeah.
well, because it's true, because you've been talking to us. You've been talking to us. Anyway, I'm in danger of going off at a slight tangent, Catherine. So
You
you're
still
really
on
good.
the why, yeah?
Yeah, so let's stay on the why. So we've got vulnerability. We've got
Yeah.
you won't find out what's going on until you build up that trust. And so we can only build up relationships at the speed of trust.
Yeah.
So what I've seen previously is lots of messy community engagement. We'll go into a community, we'll hold a meeting, and we'll ask them what their problems and priorities are, but they don't know, like, and trust us. They don't know us, they don't like us, and they don't trust us yet. So if you didn't know, like, and trust the police, would you go to a community meeting hosted by the police in your community? I wouldn't be seen anywhere near it, especially if it was an area where there's lots of crime that's not reported, and it's a sort of crime that's fueled by organized criminality. So what I'd start off by doing, so why is it so important? We'll stick to the why, and then we'll look at some of the hows. But one of the other whys, I think, is around if there is organized crime taking place, and in some of our most challenging communities, where you will, I hope you want to work in them, because
Yeah.
this is where the challenge is. This is where you can make the most difference in people's lives. So, in those areas that are like OCG have got a stranglehold, and I don't want to sound all line of duty, but look, this is a reality that the leadership within some communities is the illegitimate leadership. It's the unlawful leadership. People turn to OCG members to get things sorted out because they don't trust the police, or if they're seen to speak to the police, they're fearful of the repercussions of just even talking to the police. And so there's a lot of crime going on that we're not aware of, and if we're not aware of it, we can't deal with it.
Yeah.
You know what it's like, Catherine? I think sometimes people think from watching cop dramas that the police just turn up and the crystal ball is activated, and it's like, yeah, number 22 Acacia Street, that's where we need to execute the warrant. Or go out and speak to your snouts, go and speak to your
Yeah, yeah,
informant.
yeah, I know what you mean.
It doesn't work like that, does it? It's
Can't
just
protect them, is what you're saying. Is you can't. So far, we've got community forward facing, and you have people. How will you connect with the harder to reach members of the community? We've got. This could be a lot of crime going on, but we might not aware of it. We can't protect them, and then there could be vulnerable people in there. They could be harmed, dead, or we've not built up the trust. So it's important to build up the trust, be aware of the crime there. Those are the two whys. Have I understood that correctly?
yeah. And so there's victims of crimes, there's vulnerable people. So it's not just victims of crime. So you might have honor-based violence. Um, may have young people who are victims of
Yeah,
sexual abuse within the family. But then there's the wider sense of it's not just about crime, it's about the adverse experiences that some children have, adverse childhood experiences. So for all of you who are listening to this and watching this, I'd highly recommend, if you've not come across this yet, that you start reading up on adverse childhood experiences. So it's not just that some young people are growing up in an environment where there's crime in the family, but there's also
yeah,
sexual abuse, physical harm, drugs, alcohol abuse, unemployment, mental health, a homicide in the family, a single parent. I'm not saying that any of those one things in isolation are harmful, but when you have three or four of those things in your life, I think the research tells us that you're something like 20 or 30 times more likely to go to prison than you and
yeah,
I. So,
yeah,
it's almost like, you hear sometimes people saying, oh, the poor little soul born into that family, their cards are marked.
yeah,
Kind of are. And the research shows that, yeah, their cards are marked. And so if we can find a way to have that effective communication within a community,
Yeah.
got an opportunity there to save lives, not necessarily because of
Yeah.
criminality, but because of the
It's just,
the other things, the other things that a lot of young people especially are suffering from, and they just see this as just our life. This is my life. Um, so if we can break that cycle, but we can't
okay.
do it until people know, like, and trust us. So there's the conundrum. Like, they're hard to reach, they're seldom heard. We know why it's so important because people get harmed.
Yeah.
So I suppose we're ready now to start talking about how we go about doing it.
Yeah, let's do it. So the how.
Yeah, this is the tough part.
And
Because
so sorry, but in if you answered the question, would you say and how I'd do it, kind of signpost it up, or would you
yeah, definitely, like, I'd signpost these as separate chapters. So
and
first of
say
all,
that interview
yeah,
panel? Now I'm looking
yeah.
at the how.
So if the start of it would be, so how in the future as a police officer would you engage with members of the community who don't trust the police? Common question.
Common.
I'd start off with, well, first of all, I'd like to talk about why engaging with members of the community is so important.
Yes, I like that.
Yeah. So you're signposting it. First of all, I'm going to talk about, and this is it. And then you've got your why, and you've got to be careful of time now. So this is why it's so
Yeah,
important with your coach to make sure that you can get this into like 4 or 5 minutes. Yeah, otherwise they may stop you because some forces do have a cutoff at 5 minutes.
yeah.
There's a little bit more latitude. So I know for one of our successful clients recently had an interview that was meant to be 45 minutes long, and 1 hour and 30 minutes later he walked out because they put their pens down, stopped writing, and it just became a conversation where I know from debriefing him, he talked about things like this.
Yeah,
Because they were
yeah,
so interested. They were so interested. It was like, I've not thought of it like that, you know. So he really grabbed their attention. And not
yeah,
every force is going to be like that. Some forces are, some
yeah.
forces to deliver an answer in 5 minutes, no supplementary questions, and it's just like a conveyor belt.
Okay, so I've just written now, I've summarized that. I've written my whys, and now I'm on to the right. Now I'll tell you how I'd do it. So off you go.
So, if this was me as a young constable in an area that was quite challenging, I hate the phrase deprived because I've never met any people in that community who would describe themselves as deprived. The labels we give people, interesting. There's another conversation, but the labels we give people, sometimes they will live up to that label. So the first thing I'd do, and this is what I've done, is I'd find out where the bumping spaces are. And when I mean bumping spaces, I mean where do people meet?
Mm,
Where do they meet? So ideally, community centre. It's like ideally community centre. So you know what most officers are like, don't you? If they get their refs, they're getting it from Greg's, Mac, Biggie, was it Mackie,
co-op.
Co-op, Tesco's meal deal. You know, that's where they get their refs from,
Mm,
or they bring their refs in.
yeah,
What would be so harmful about going to the community centre where actually they serve a great soup and a roll, or they serve a great meal that's actually a meal that reflects the culture that's predominant in that area? What's so wrong with going to get your F's there?
mm,
And I just think we could
mm,
make huge leaps and bounds as a police service if we just took our refreshment break in the community, in the heart of the community, not
yeah,
in your police van, not back at the police station. You're not gonna talk to any members of the public in the police station. Go and
yeah.
get Go and get your refs in the community centre.
Yeah, I
Go and
like
get
that.
your refs. Go and get your refs at the cafe. If there's no community centre, there will be a cafe. There will be somewhere where people stop to get a cup of tea, a bite to eat, something. That's where you go. That's where you go. And you don't start off the conversation there with, um, "Can you? Oh, can I come and join you? Do you mind if I sit next to you, or do you mind if I sit near to you?" No, that's fine. That's fine. Great. My name's Brendan. Can you tell me what your problems and priorities are? Like, but this is what the police do.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
so they do this. You know this yourself. You've had senior officers saying, go into the community and find out what the problems and
yeah,
priorities are.
yeah, yeah.
It's a bit like walking it. If I was to walk up, if I wasn't married, I'm happily married, look, happily married, but if I wasn't married and I was looking to find a partner, if I just walked up to a woman who I thought was quite attractive on the street and said, "Hey, my name's Brendan. How are you?" "Oh, I'm fine, thank you. Um, what are you up to today?" "Oh, I'm just going for a walk with my dog." "Hey, I've got a dog as well. Do you want to get married?"
Yeah, yeah.
Like, whoa, weirdo, weirdo. But it sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? Like, no, too soon. We've not gone through
No,
building up a relationship. I don't trust you. I don't know you. I don't like
yeah,
you.
yeah. No, I agree. But no,
So in the
100%.
same way, we expect people to go into communities and go, um, what are your problems and priorities? Their response will be, "I'm not talking to you. I don't
Yeah.
know you. I don't like you. I don't know you. Don't trust you." So we've got to build up a relationship, and we can only build up that relationship at the speed of trust. And so
Okay, so we've got so far. Go and take your refreshments. What next?
it's
I
the
like that. I'm making
quality,
lots of notes.
the quality of your conversation when you're there.
Like
The
that.
quality of your conversation. So
Yeah.
instead of what are your problems and priorities, I just start off with, "This soup's lovely. Who's got the recipe for this soup?"
Mm.
Simple as that. Simple as that. Just as simple as that. "This soup's lovely. Who's got the recipe for this? Tell me this. I've not discovered this place before. I was driving past the other day and I saw that you're actually doing food, so I thought I'd pop in for my refs. What's the history behind this place? How long has this place been open? Have I missed this for so many years? I've been driving past now for like 2 or 3 years, and
Yeah,
what, you've been open for 10 years now, and I've failed to enjoy this awesome meal. Wow! I'm going to tell you what. If it's okay, I'll tell my colleagues as well. They'll come here for the refs.
yeah, that's nice.
So we're just starting with something that was
Quality of convo. Yeah, I
it's
like
just
that.
quality of the conversation. We're starting off with simple questions that aren't going to freak people out.
Okay, so what else for bump? Those are your bumping spaces and what you do when you got there. What else? How else would you engage?
So I'm just trying to think, is there anything else there that would be helpful? Yes, we've got to build up that conversation, build up that relationship, build it up at the speed of trust.
Yeah, I like that.
And at some point, without us asking, I promise you all this, try it out once you're actually in the police. I promise you this, and I'll put money on it. I'll donate a £500 to the charity of your choice if you do these things and it doesn't work. At some point in the future, someone's going to say to you, um, "Brendan, can I just have a little word with you? Yeah, in private."
Yeah,
"Yeah, well, let's just we'll just is there a room free?"
yeah,
"Yeah." And they're going to go in and they're going to test the water and they're going to say something like, "There's this house down the road, and
yeah,
every time I walk past it, in the bedroom and the top, all I can see are the faces of young women that look like they're about 17 or 18, and they're just looking out. It's almost like they're pleading with me." And I watched the house the other evening, and there was these cars coming and going, and men going in, and an hour later they'd come out, and I don't know what's going on there, but it just doesn't seem right. And straight away you're thinking about sex slaves. These
mm,
people are being kept here against their will and being used as sex slaves. So now they've told us something. They're testing the water. Or it might be just like there's this house down the road, and every time I walk
yeah,
past, there's this absolute stench of cannabis, and all the windows they're always closed,
yeah,
and there's never a car there, and I sometimes see this
yeah,
uh, this young Asian guy go in, and
yeah.
then he's been there for a
Really
couple
good. Writing that down. Yeah,
yeah, and it's like, right, cannabis farm, but they're testing the water. They're not going to tell us straight away, "Oh, if you go to 48 Acacia Avenue and do a search warrant there, you're going to find a loaded firearm and about £10,000 worth of cash." That's not a conversation they're ready for yet. They're testing the water here a little bit because at this point they're starting to trust you, they're starting to like you, they're starting to know you, and they're starting to get a sense of,
yeah,
actually, I get Brendan, and I think I want to do the right thing, but I'm scared stiff because of the community I live in. I
yeah.
want to share this. Now's the time. I'm going to share a little bit and see what happens.
Okay, so we are running out of time, and I've got a client in 10 minutes. And I know you've got a meeting because
Yeah.
that's
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I can. You know me. Once I
uh,
get on a topic, I can go forever. So there's something else we can talk about here. Is how do we build up that know, like, and trust? Um, we do things in the community even though we weren't told we needed to do something about them. So I sometimes see police forces having this sort of, walk with a cop and tell us what all of the
Yeah,
community. And I just think you don't need to walk around with a member of the community to do that. Just get your backside off your seat, go and
yeah,
patrol, and just look for things that are wrong. Because the standard you walk past is the standard you're prepared to accept and the standard that you've become. So if you walk past that bus stop that's full of graffiti and broken glass and you don't do anything about it, then you've just accepted that that's a standard for the community. So instead of you said we did, I love the phrase, you didn't have to say, but we just did it anyway.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You didn't have to say, but we just did it anyway. Because how can you hold a community meeting and ask people what the problems and priorities are when they're just going to stare you in the face and go, duh, did you not see the broken phone boxes? Did you not see that there's not one phone box working? Did you not see the graffiti? Did you not see the dumped mattress? Did you not see all of those things? And I call this the Great Budworth test. You know Great Budworth, don't you?
Yeah, Cheshire, isn't it?
Yeah, Cheshire, beautiful little village,
Yeah.
cobbled, thatched roofs. This was my Great Budworth test, and I've used this in court once and closing down the nightclub. My Great Budworth test goes like this. It's like I said, beautiful village. The pub dates back to 1200 and something. There's a church there that dates back to 1300 and something. It's got the original stocks there from like hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Beautiful little village. You could take any photograph there and stick it on the front of a chocolate box. The test is, if the behaviour or the results of the behaviour would not be acceptable in Great Budworth, why are they acceptable here?
Oh, that's really
And
good.
so do things to get things fixed and sorted out, even though it may be like a bus stop. Oh, that's not my remit. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You spotted it first. Do something about it. And although it's not like formal community engagement, you're building up that sense of know, like, and trust because suddenly people will notice there's a difference. The broken
Yeah,
glass in the kids' playground has been fixed. The playground equipment has been fixed. Why? Because Great Budworth test.
yeah.
And because we want to invest time and energy to build up know, like, and trust in this area. And one of the ways of doing that is to just do things without being asked to do so. Because it's so blindingly obvious that this thing's broken and needs fixing. And it wouldn't be acceptable in Great Budworth, so why is it acceptable here? So
So,
set a high standard.
yeah.
And then as a result of that, I promise you people are going to come up to you and say, hey, were you responsible for blah, 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 blah? Yeah, we got it fixed. Why did you do that? Because I don't think it's acceptable for people in this community to suffer this level of harm in terms of things being broken.
Okay, so we've got about 5 minutes left, and I know you are so, so busy, and I know you've got a meeting next, which is why I booked this time in with you. So tell me what it would look like. The what?
So, right, what we're going to get at the end of this, and this is not just like me just coming up with ideas. This is what happened.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
subject of another conversation about how do we actually enable community groups to get off the ground? Because once we've got the conversation going, we want people to set up community associations in that community. That associational life goes back to the heart of the Peelian principles. The police are the public and the public are the police. The police just being members of the public. So we're just members of the public who are paid full time to carry out a role which is incumbent on every citizen in the
yeah.
interest of community welfare and existence. So what it's saying, what Sir Robert Peel was saying was that we want to get citizens to the stage of them being involved in the welfare and existence of their community, the well-being of their community, the community cohesiveness.
And being
And that only
involved.
happens through associational life where people know, like, and trust each other. And so this is where the police become like the glue that binds the community together. And we're enabling community associations to get off the ground to tackle things like youth violence through not lectures about knife crime, but let's set up a football team, let's set up a cheerleading squad, but the police aren't going to do it, the community are going to do it. So we're going to enable them. And perhaps we could do another session about that another time, because I think that'd be useful for promotion candidates as well. But what's it going to result in? That associational life. What else will it result in? More criminal intelligence coming in that we know what to do with. And we
Yeah,
were in a position, we had more covert human intelligence sources on our patch than any other part of our division by a long way, by a mile off. And we had so much good intelligence coming in that we just didn't know what to do with some of it. And it was serious, like they've tested the water with that house, with the
group.
canvas farm or
Yeah,
the slaves, And now they're starting to give us information about, and I used a sort of loaded firearm and £10,000 in cash in cocaine because
Yeah.
actually I did have that. A man approached me who 2 years before had told me I was full of shit. He
Mm.
approached me on the street, waved me down, flagged me down, and said, that bicycle ridden by that person in that park in 5 minutes' time, stop and search it, you're going to find. And we did. I was with a tactical aid unit at the time, bizarrely, unfortunately. I can't remember what we were doing. I think we were wrecking a house for a search warrant. And I was bored and I went out with them. And we did. We stopped and searched it and we found loaded firearm, £10,000 of cash, and £10,000 worth of cocaine. It was going to be handed back to an OCG member.
Oh,
We broke the meat before it actually happened. But that person would have never have told us if we'd not built up that know, like, and trust through those conversations where they want to volunteer information to us
yeah,
as
down, yeah.
so we've got the associational life, we've got the welfare and existence of the community that's growing and flourishing. We've got people who are happy to live there. We've got
Right.
people who are proud to live there. We're building on what they're proud to do, and we feel like we're a part of the community as opposed to
Yeah, I like that.
apart from it. So there's no them and us.
Oh,
I'll sort of end on this, and maybe, probably not, probably well, maybe best to use it. I don't know. You decide as a candidate. But I remember once the superintendent saying to me, "You need to do some community engagement in this area," and I said, "We don't do community engagement." And he was like, "What? You're like Mr. Community Engagement, you are." And I said, "No, we don't do community engagement because if we do community engagement, there's a sort of it sounds like there's a them and us. We have to engage with them so they can engage with us. But we are a part of the community. So we don't do community engagement. We just do community." And he was like, "Oh, shut up."
yeah, I
Not.
understand. I remember you saying that, and it's very powerful to feel
But
part of it.
if you, but it's a long journey. So it's a long journey. So that's
Yeah,
what it's going to result in. But you'll also, and I remember this, I'll kind of end on this because it's an example, a real life example from some work we did in Gloucestershire in Gloucester to enable to get their officers to be working in this mindset. And there was an area called Coney Hill where the chief inspector said, "Look, if there was a murder there tomorrow, would we know who to point? Which community members would we point the SIO towards, the senior investigating officer towards?" And everyone went, "I don't know. I know the head teacher. That's about it. I know the priest. That's about it." And so at that point, they realized we're in trouble. And so 1 year later, they enabled the community to set up a youth group. And it was called Echoes, Echoes 2. You might want to look it up because they still do amazing work. I went to visit them about 2 years after they got set up. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing, like 70 or 80 young people there. I knew that about 60, 70% of them were on the at-risk register, and they were thriving now. The young leaders, 14, 15-year-olds, were becoming young leaders, mentoring the younger people, adults in the community who've been supported by the council for all different sorts of courses, safeguarding courses, how to run a meeting, how to engage with young people. They were running the youth group, not the police, not the council. They were involved, but it was the community running it for the community on behalf of the community. And whilst I was there was a young lad about 10 or 11 years old who got a bit teary. And one of the young leaders took him to one side and spoke to him. And she came back and told one of the adults, who told one of the police officers, that it just disclosed. I don't know. I wasn't privy to what was disclosed. I didn't need to be, but I was made aware that it was extreme vulnerability at his home. They made him aware, because he was crying and because he was sad. He opened up because he trusted the people around him.
trust. Yeah.
And when I followed up on this, it transpired that they probably saved the young lad and I think his sister as well, probably saved their lives because
Wow.
of the extreme abuse that he was going through. And he wouldn't have said that. He wouldn't have had an avenue to say or disclose any of that. So there's some lives saved. So what happens? Why is it important? People get hurt. That's an extreme version. People get hurt and harmed. What will it result in? It will result in young people like that young lad having their life saved, and that his life will be remarkably different now as a result of that community's efforts to um, be the best version of itself it can be. And
Do you know
it
what?
got my
Good one.
heart.
Yeah, got you. And that's what it is. It's about hearts and minds. I know it's a cliche, but it's true, isn't it? It's what matters here. So
Yeah,
we
100%.
talk about that. So that's a really good point to finish on. That's a brilliant summary, and I've made notes for my clients, and I know we're going to put this somewhere that people can listen to, absorb, and have that confidence for the forward-facing questions.
And what I'd also say to anyone watching or listening to this who are our clients, and we love you to bits, you know, we think you're all amazing. You're amazing because you're here and we're part of the Blue Light Academy. But if you're thinking, I'd love to hear more of this sort of thing on a specific topic, do let us know and we can have more of these sort of conversations because I think when it's conversational, sometimes it's a bit like a podcast, isn't it? You're like, actually, we could probably podcast this, but only for our Academy members.
Oh,
So
thank you very much, Brendan. I'll let you go to your, I know you got a meeting just starting now, and I really appreciate it. I'll share that with my lots of clients, and we'll share that with all the other Academy, and we'll make us even more brilliant if that's
yeah,
possible.
awesome, awesome. If it's possible, yeah. Right, Catherine, I'll catch you soon.
Bye.